So those of you who are new to Wisdom Soup, I'm Ann Tucker, and I started Wisdom Soup back in the day when I was on my own spiritual journey. And I needed friends. I was like in a space where none of my friends were into this stuff at all. And I had no one to share it with and no one to talk to about it. And so I was trying to find my way through. So I literally, I kind of like tried on my current friends. Nobody was interested. So I rented a theater in downtown Bellevue and I put like a thing on Meetup, and thank gosh, like 25 people showed up. And among them was Marilyn and some of the other people who are here with us today too. And I did it as like a speaker series. So I was the first guinea pig. I was the first speaker. And then every month I would feature someone new, and it became an amazing way to generate connection. But I also loved that it was a way of exploring new ideas, of always keeping an open mind, of being really expanding myself too, because I found that as my journey unfolded, there was certain ideas that I was really resistant to in the beginning. Like even things like even in the beginning, I was very skeptical in the beginning. So even crystals and and dragons and things, I would have been like, oh yeah, right. And now I'm like, yay, crystals. Back then I was like, crystals are just rocks. And then, of course, I invited a person who owns a crystal shop to come and do a presentation and blew my mind. And it was a process of let's blow my mind again. And so it has been a super fun way to always be learning, which is something you guys know the angels have always told us, that beginner's mind is one of the ways we prepare ourselves for the new earth, is to be ready to see things beyond our expectations. So here we are, we're doing it, right? And so with that in mind, and by the way, we always meet second Thursday of the month. And it's online. With COVID, we transitioned to online, and it was phenomenal because we were able then to include people from all over the world, which has been fantastic. And each month we feature a new speaker. This month is Nancy Rebecca, which some of you may have heard of, particularly if you follow Pam Gregory. You may have heard of her because I think she's been on Pam Gregory's show a couple of times. So what drew us, me and Nancy, me and Wendy and Kira, to Nancy, what drew us was not only her just general awesomeness, which you will enjoy very much, but her story and her message, what she's been doing. So she's been talking a lot about something that sounds a whole lot like the flash of light, which is something I've talked a lot about. So there's definitely an alignment between our messages. But she is, in terms of her backstory, she is a retired registered nurse who had the call to spirit in a really cool and interesting way, which I'm sure she's going to share with us today. And she now is out loud and proud as a spiritual teacher in the world, teaching people about intuition and psychic ability, helping them to access their own. So I would love to introduce you guys to Nancy Rebecca. Let me bring you in to there we are. Hello, welcome, Nancy.
Hi, Anne. Am I unmuted now?
You are now. We can hear you. You are all
Okay.
good.
Okay, awesome.
And we've got lots of people in the chat, which is super fun. Gwyneth, it's her first time here and so welcome, Gwyneth. Lots and lots of people joining in. So excited for the session, says Cheryl. Fantastic, you guys. It's really wonderful to have you guys here with us. And then Bridget watches your lives every Thursday, Nancy. So that's really awesome. Annie says, we've so loved having our minds blown with you. That's awesome, Annie. Thank you for that. So I had fun preparing for our conversation today, Nancy, because there were so many cool directions we could go.
Yeah.
But I want to start somewhere close to the beginning. Some of the people here may know your story a little bit, but
Yeah.
I would love to touch on, I understand that you had a really gratifying career as a registered nurse, and then something, and I want to know what drove you to buy a book secretly, hiding this meditation book from your husband, secretly drove you to buy a meditation book. And this to me is like such a sign of like we are pulled into our spirit journey. So what happened? What made you go get the meditation book to begin with? And this is important, you guys, because this is what took the lid off the can for Nancy.
Exactly. Well, I had been working intensive care, cardiac, surgical unit, and I had been asked to go for about 30 days over to hospice because they worked with people who had cancer, end of life care for cancer, but not for end of life care for heart disease and lung disease, which was one of my specialties. And so I went over to train, and I ended up loving it so much that I ended up staying there. And it was a period of time. So it was in my first year as a hospice nurse, and it was a period of time where suddenly three of my own family members were diagnosed really with a terminal illness. And they probably all within a 7 month period of time died. And
Mm.
one of them was my sister-in-law, Marla, who was only 32 years old at the time, and she died of pancreatic cancer. Now, for me, I'm a nurse, but I'm also, get the award for being other oriented at that time, and caring a lot for other people and being a fixer and a healer by nature. And and so here I am, by day working as a hospice nurse, and by night going and caring for them and helping our all of our families navigate this. And it was my husband's sister who was only 32. So I hit a breaking point. It was just like whatever coping mechanisms I had were just not going to work for me in this next level that was going to be required of me at this human level. And I had zero spiritual connection. I was not raised in a church. I think, like many people, we went on Easter. We get our little Easter dresses, and this was in 1994. So it's 30 years ago. So I didn't really have a connection, but I was so distraught. I had this feeling. I had seen images of people praying, and when they pray, they get on their knees, they get by the bed. I'm going to follow all the rules. And I went in the bedroom, I locked my door so that nobody could see this crazy thing that I was doing. Got on my knees and then just cried out loud, God, why do people have to die?
Mm.
And I just started sobbing, but in between the sobs was, what the hell are you doing? Get off your knees. You don't know what you're doing. Who are you talking to? I didn't even know that a God existed, or did it exist? So that's kind of where it came from, that initial, why do people have to die?
Mm.
And so when I think about this inspiration to go get this meditation book, for me at the time, I thought, oh, I just had a brilliant idea. Well, now looking back, that was part of the answer. Go
Yes.
get this meditation book, get still, get quiet, get inside. So I did go, and I didn't even ask anybody about, where their meditation books were, because in that time frame, people stopped speaking to you if you meditated.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
was, they really thought something was wrong with you. So I get the book. It's in a brown paper sack. I quietly lift it out of my bag. I hide it behind all the other books. And so I didn't want anybody to know. And then that night, after my husband and the kids had gone to bed, it was about 11 o'clock at night. I just tiptoed downstairs and I slipped out the book and just read the first chapter. And it was like, and I'm smart, right? I can figure this stuff out. Okay, turn down the lights, put on soft music, light a candle. I've got this. Next instruction, breathe, right? And so I I laughed because this is how it was. It was like, like you're trying to pretend like you know what you're doing. I was trying to pretend. And then there was I felt strange. And that strangeness, when I look back now, it was as if the room suddenly became very crowded. I kind of got a little scared, and I thought, okay, that's a good enough start. So I put the book back in the bag, hid
Hit
it
it.
behind books, and turned off all the lights, got my pajamas on, went to bed. So, kind of in a nutshell, there was a flash of light. I was standing next to my body, but I went to touch my body, and my arms went through my body. And so I knew nothing about an out of body experience, but that's how it started. And for over a month, every time I closed my eyes, my body would collapse, and then I would go on these spiritual journeys.
Wow.
But during the day, instantly became suddenly sighted. So my, not just my clairvoyance, but everything opened up. And I was terrified, as you can imagine. And so that's really how the journey started.
Yeah.
And then spirit led me to the woman that was dressing like a hippie with Birkenstocks on. It was like, okay, she's probably going to know what's happening to me. And often people will ask, well, what was the answer? Why do people have to die? Did that answer come back? It did come back. When I had my out of body experience, I heard this voice say, die. You're a spirit. Your body's laying in the bed and your spirit's here. And the voice that I know is God to me was letting me know through an actual experience that our soul lives on. And
Yes.
so, but then it came with another set of instructions, which I know, Anne, you can relate to this, and now we need you to go out into the world and help other people remember that they're a soul having a human experience. And
There's,
that's how it
yeah.
all started.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I think there's so many things in that story that other people can relate to. The first being that it came out of a dark place, right? We are led into a place of contraction
Yeah.
so that we will reach out to spirit, right?
Yes.
And it's literally like when I hear your story, what strikes me is that all it took was you to give them permission. You had to ask out loud, which we always talk about with the angels. We have to speak out loud. You asked out loud, and then boom, it shows up for you. Like, and
Yeah.
I know with like everybody's like, I'm going to do that tonight, but we all are on a different journey. Like we might not all get our out of body experience
Well,
immediately.
and I
But
call it God as an afterthought. It's
mm,
like your life, it's like your life has to fall apart. Oh, I think
yeah,
I'll maybe ask God now. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
I always talk about it
exactly.
now, like, don't wait till that point,
Yeah.
to have those conversations.
And open the door.
Yeah.
So cool. And it's also I also love how relatable it is that those initial experiences are, even though you're wanted, it's terrifying. Like I
Oh, yeah.
remember the first time I saw, like, I have three visitations from Yeshua in my bedroom. And the first two were like, and these were like quite a distance apart, like a years apart, like a year apart, and then another one. The first two, it was just a voice in the doorway to my bedroom. And the first time he just came through and said my name. And it was like, and then the second time he came through and said, there's going to be a chicken disease, which was like so random. But then right after that, we had the chicken, like, flu, thing where they had to kill all the
Yeah.
chickens. And then the third time he shows up next to me, and I think it's so real. I think it's my partner standing there, and I'm saying, "Why are you up? Are you okay?" And then I look and realize there's no one there. But I could see him in my mind's eye. Like I was so sure that someone, and it freaked me out so bad. I start clearing the room. Like I'm energetically. And then only when my mind comes to me, I realize I'm clearing Yeshua out of my bedroom. And I'm like, come back. But it scared the pants off me. And
Yeah.
like I think it's a thing in the beginning. We may think we're ready for it, but when it happens, I mean, like you must have been absolutely freaked out in that first moment. Like, what is this presence? So
Yeah.
how did they first, the beings who speak with you, because you are a channel for what you
Mhm.
call, do you call them now the blue light beings? Because I know the blue
Well,
light is like the light that represents trust. But yeah.
yeah. So, I do. It, so when the beings came through, there was definitely, I had a Jesus experience as well. And it was about 3 weeks into it. And I thought my kids had turned on the lights. I woke up, eyes are closed, but it's like, the lights on. And when I opened my eyes, Jesus was there. And all I heard was, you have more love inside of you than you can possibly imagine. And I'm here to give you that experience. And from his heart to my heart came all this overwhelming love that I blacked out. Like
Oh my
it was
gosh.
just so much. Like, we can't even conceive of how much love is available to us, just not even at arm's length. It's just there. But so if I mean, I can leap to the blue light beings, because I had been communicating. Mostly I communicate with my higher self. So I just want to let everybody know that. And if I communicate with angels and guides and things like that, it's like my higher self is the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
So my higher self gives it to me in the Reader's Digest version, because when they're communicating, it can be so metaphoric or so symbolic, or you have to kind of try to read between the lines to understand at the human level. You are all love. Okay, great, but how does that help me at the practical level? And so that's how I communicate. But when and I was never a star being person. Like that was I had never really heard of them. I mean, I'd heard of spaceships and I'd heard of ETs and things like that. And people would say, "How come you don't talk about that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's just not my lane. I'm a
Yeah.
nurse. I'm teaching people how incredible their human energy field is, how incredible they are as a soul, helping people really learn to get their own answers without relying on other people like you or me." But um and so I just kind of every time it kind of came to me, I just moved it aside. And it was in 2017. I have a room just for my meditation. And I was just doing my regular meditating and just getting still and quiet. And then suddenly the room, I felt a presence. It was like the, we'll have the ear ringing, the high pitched shrill, and it's almost like you can hear something coming, like a train coming from in the distance, and that it's getting closer. So I could hear that in my ear. And then it was like there were the room was crowded. So I opened my eyes and I looked around, and then I just looked way up because they were very tall and they were all blue. And I was like, "Can I help you?" Like, what do you say? You don't even know what to. And it wasn't even like, "Hi, how are you? We're Syrians from the planet Sirius." They just said, "We need you to go to China and get the prophecy." That was it.
You're like, huh? What? So, okay, so for perspective, when did this happen? From the
In
date that you bought the
2017,
okay, so when did you buy the meditation book? So just to show the time period.
1994.
That was okay. So this was quite like 20 years late. So by this point, you're out of the closet as a meditator to the point where you even
Right.
have a meditation room.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then, and you were a regular practicing the whole time, practicing
Regular
meditation.
practicing, have a year waiting list to get in to have a reading with me,
Awesome.
and I'm giving talks all over the world. I'm teaching all over the world. I'm traveling. I lived out of a suitcase for 5 years because Spirit had told me I needed to go out in the world and become portable. Like I do everything they asked me to do. I,
Yes.
I lived in a Zulu hut for almost a year with no running water and no toilet, like
What?
with amongst the Zulus. I've gone through Zulu Sangoma training for 3 years. So yes, all of that was part of my life. And then they showed up.
Wow. Okay. So, because that was where I was going, and it sounds like it was true all the way through your whole journey, which is the commitment to just follow spirit. So they told you literally. So how did you get the nudge to move in with the Zulus? Like, how did that come to you? And you were like, can I,
Well,
can
it's
I
like,
stay
how
in the
much
nearby
time do
hotel?
we have? But this is how it happens for me.
Okay.
I'm noticing a pattern here. So the pattern is I was waiting for my next client's appointment to be at 10 o'clock. And let's say it's 9:30, and I'm just sitting there and I'm clearing after my last client, preparing for the new client, and the room fills up with spiritual beings and said, "We need you to sell everything and become portable.
They tell you need to be portable.
And we need you to sell everything."
Oh my gosh.
And I said,
Okay.
"Well, that's not really going to be possible. I've got kids in high school, and, so I'm giving them all the reasons why I can't do that." And I said, "I could only consider it after my daughters graduated from high school." And then that was it. They said, "Okay, we'll be back." And
Oh
three
my
years
goodness.
later, I had forgotten all about it. And they showed up and they said, "Your daughter's graduating in June. That gives you enough time to put a sign in the yard to sell your house
Oh my
and
gosh.
sell all of your worldly belongings, and that'll give you time." And and so that's kind of how it happened. And then they told me, don't go through a real estate agent, stick a sign in the yard, we'll bring the person. That's exactly what they did. It was two attorneys. I wrote out the sale agreement on a piece of paper, and they told me the price. And then the attorney said, well, the bank said the price is too high. Your house isn't that valuable. And I said, well, then don't buy it, because Spirit told me that's what I need to sell it for. They did walk away, and then they came back and said, please sell it to us. They bought it at the price that Spirit told me to sell it.
Wow.
And then I sold everything. And then but I had gone to Australia and New Zealand and Hawaii and South Africa to work with shamans. I wanted to learn the ancient art of healing. So I had already done 1 2 week visit to South Africa. So I was connected to someone there, and he said, why don't you start off here? And he lived amongst the Zulus. And so that's how that started.
Okay, okay. Beautiful. I really do think there is a strong connection between it's that and that it definitely has been something that's guided my journey too. I think it's something that, and I think many people here can relate to it, is that it is that degree to which our how committed are we to following the once we all want the guidance, once we get guidance, how committed are we to following it?
Exactly.
And yeah, and then that opens
Yeah.
you up to more and more and more flow. But it's your journey is different from mine, but there's major parallels in that I have been moved like every 2 years. You just
Yeah.
built a house, sell it, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years,
Yeah.
move to the next thing. Whatever you're making your living doing, stop doing that, do the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's
And
been
I do want to
small.
say, like, I'm shortening up this story,
Yeah.
but I'm not really addressing the angst,
And please
and the
do, because I
turmoil,
think, yeah,
of
that's
leaving your
important.
kids, and how am I going to make money, and how am I going to do this, and who's going to think I'm crazy, and you know
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
And so it really, I really needed to learn how to fortify an experience with Spirit, to
Yeah.
and have trust and faith like no other.
Yeah. And
And
so I imagine so what really gripped me as I was listening to some of your previous when you talked about stuff was these beings show up, they tell you with very little information. They say go to China and get the prophecy.
yeah,
You have nowhere like where like China's big, China's big.
and
And
they
so
don't speak English, for the, I mean, for the most part. So how it happened was, so I said to them, huh, now, and I can tell the difference. I can tell when it's like a real thing I need to do and when it's a superficial, honorable mention.
yeah.
This was, and so I said, okay, first of all, A, I don't have money.
Hmm.
B, I know nothing about China. It is a big country. I don't know where I'm supposed to go find the prophecy. So I gave the shopping list of why this might not be possible. And so I said, so if you can tick all these boxes and take care of all this, and I said, then I promise I will fulfill what you are requesting of me. 2 weeks later, a Chinese woman showed up at my front door and said, I heard that you've been visited by these beings and say you need to go to China. I will take you there.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
And it
No.
was all first class, 5 star. First time I'd ever flown first class on an airplane. First time I'd ever stayed 5 star in a hotel. Those blue light beings didn't just take care of it, they took care of it.
They're like the best travel agent ever. We're all now going to be manifesting a trip. Where do I want to go?
Well, it does require saying yes.
Wow, that is so awesome. And what I love is it's like what you're really modeling is it's a conversation, right? Like that I have found that spirit, whatever form spirit takes, does not always understand the constraints. So they
Correct.
tell you, you got to go do this. And you're like, I have a daughter. I need three,
Yeah.
so then, okay, then they listen. 3 years, they
Yeah.
come back. You said, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, it's a conversation. So, and
Yeah.
there are practical things about
And
being on earth.
negotiations.
Yeah, and
Correct.
negotiation. Yeah. I remember one time in channel they asked me to extend my lifetime, my planned lifetime, and it just popped out of my mouth. I was like, "Yes." And then afterwards, I'm like, "Why didn't I negotiate?" I was like, "Oh, I should have been like, okay, here's if I'm going to do it, then
Yeah.
the I should have been like,
Yeah.
and I did, oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay."
Well,
Next
and
time, next time I'll
it
be
is a
smarter.
partnership because
Yeah.
often people feel like if an angel comes into the room and tells you to do such and such, it's like they're an angel. You need to listen to them more than yourself. But angels have agendas.
Yes.
When I talk about Jesus has an agenda,
Yeah.
be love.
Yes. Yes.
Be kind to your neighbors. Like Jesus, the essence of Jesus is absolutely beautiful,
Mhm.
but it may not always align with your agenda. So you have to enter into negotiation, not that probably doesn't sound right, but you get to have a conversation about it.
I totally agree. And it's funny, like the agenda piece of it, like I think in our human mind, it's not that they want, it's not that they want something for themselves. I feel like it's like they have almost like they cannot be anything other than what they are.
Right,
And then sometimes what they are doesn't mix very well with a human life because we're like, well, I
right.
want to be that, but I have these practical
Yeah.
considerations.
Can I
And
love my neighbor after I punch them in the
yes,
nose?
right. Exactly. Exactly. So
And they will probably say no. They probably
yeah.
no, you can't punch them in the nose. But that's the thing. Like they understand once you let them know that you're a human.
Yeah.
You're a human.
Yeah.
You're going to have human thoughts.
And we're in a very 3D dense experience of life,
Yeah.
which is never an excuse, right? It's never an excuse,
No.
but accommodate. It's never out of fear. It's only like this is the legit. I need money to get to China.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's such an awesome. I love that detail. So okay, so by this point, I just have to backtrack slightly. By this point, how are the people in your life like? Have they all come along with you? Have they all said, okay, retired nurse Nancy, logical person who now has a year-long waiting list and is totally woo-woo? Like, I'm sure this was a process.
They thought it was a lot cooler than I did.
Wow, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
they were like, "Oh my God, you're talking to star beings." And I'm like, "Okay." Yeah, and so that's kind of how it was. That is kind of my nature to like I don't always um it's like I need to know more information and not from a mental perspective, but it's like what's the investment, in my part? What does this mean for the bigger upliftment of humanity? And that's always where I am.
Love it. Love
And
it.
so when they did share with me, because I had more conversations before I went to China, when they said there is a blue light that is coming to the earth and it's going to be coming through pyramids where it's going to be amplified, humanity needs to know that this is happening so that they can participate at a conscious level
Mhm, mhm.
because their DNA is going to be getting activated, their higher levels of intelligence are going to be able to come through and they're going to be able to conceptualize things they couldn't before. But there's going to be mass awakening on the earth and people need to know. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, like, are you sure there isn't somebody else that can do this?
I totally can relate to what you are saying. So, okay, so you are tasked to go to China. And from what I understand, you were there for what, 30 days? And it wasn't until the very last 24 hours that you finally, and this again, the walk of spirit, right? You have no idea what you're looking for. You're roaming around, not sure where to go. It's like how many people would give up in that process, who would just sit down with a bowl of noodles and be like, I give up. And
And I was ready to give up because I had met, so she had arranged for me to meet with all these Taoist masters. And
Ah,
we went all over China
okay.
and meeting with Taoist masters. and they tested me a lot.
Mm.
So before they would talk to me, they were like, okay, read them, read them, read them, read them. And it would be like, I, there was this one big, it was like the most beautiful golden, gold plated everything, marble floors. There's this Buddhist monk sitting in this big golden throne at the front, and they've brought me in,
Wow.
and he's like, I need you to do a reading on this, and I need you to do a reading on that. And by this time I'm pretty exhausted because here in America, nobody believes me. You know, if I have a client come in, they're going to be pretty skeptical unless I say something that hits the nail on the head. So I can travel incognito and nobody takes me seriously, but there they took me very seriously. So finally, I had to say to him, look, I'm not used to just having to read again and again and again, like on the spot. I just need a break.
Yeah.
But that's at that temple. It was in Xi'an, China. So Xi'an, China is where the terracotta warriors are. That's where I got the prophecy.
Oh, wow.
And it's where the Buddha finger is located, and they have built this incredible temple. It's absolutely beautiful. But you get your ticket to go in, and once every hour, a gilded cage comes out of the ceiling that's like 100 feet high, and it comes down and it has the Buddha finger on this velvet pillow. And then they have pillows all around the circle so people will line up to meditate and to tune in to the Buddha light. And so I was in this line, and then it was my turn. I kneel on the cushion. This blue lightning bolt came out of the ceiling, hit me right on top of the head. It's just like this explosion of light. I went flying backwards. I knocked my friend back. I fell into her. We both fell. And then people were kind of, I was kind of out, and people kind of picked me up and kind of dragged me across the floor. But the vision was, the prophecy was, is that there were going to be three waves, enormous, strong waves that were going to be coming through in 2019, 2021, and 2023 that were going to start awakening the world, you know, at a massive level. And that it was that the blue light plasma was to dissolve illusion and enhance truth. And um, and so we needed to get ready. And so it took me, we went to dinner, and then there were 6 Chinese friends there that had started traveling with us, right? They're like, this is cool, let's go. So there were like 6. And I said, okay, I got the prophecy. I got the prophecy. So then I share it with them, and they got super quiet and they start talking to each other in Chinese. And I said, what's happening? And they said, this prophecy is written about in a book, China in Chinese, that was written 1,500 years ago.
Whoa. Oh,
So this book is still in existence that talks about this time that we're living in now.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. So
So,
interesting too, because so I have heard about the three waves, and then I've also heard about the flash of light. And so the three waves I heard about mostly like in 2020. I started hearing about the three waves and seeing lots of dreams about, but then but there's multiple ways. I've heard about three waves, which has been very confusing. So it's, I think that there's three waves in several different aspects. I can't quite describe it.
yeah,
And I don't want to go into the details of that because I want to stay focused on your story, but then there is also this one big, what the angel said is the moment we will look back on and say that everything changed. There's another big wave of light coming. So
yeah,
anyways, fascinating. But so, okay. So then continue on with, you said you had those three time periods, and you
yeah,
felt or saw or confirmed that those waves came.
yes. And so I did meet another Taoist master after that. He was not very nice, but they all told me, isn't that amazing? Like you can have this amazing experience, and there's that one little
Yeah.
experience that can kind of get you. I have
Yeah.
more confidence now. I would have talked to him a little differently, but and it's a Taoist tradition. You must get your own information, and I can relate to that because that's how I'm teaching people how to learn to get their own information. He wasn't not, and I'm done. Like by this time, I'm so done. It's the end of the month. I'm about ready to go home. We're heading back to Beijing. We're going to fly out 2 days from now. I'm supposed to meet with one more person. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And she said, you have to. And she paid for the trip, right? But I'm like, but I'm exhausted and I'm tired of just being, I felt so beaten down to then at the end be told, you have your own information. We're not allowed to tell you. So anyway, she informed me that he's one of the top known people in all of China, and he does not do private, he doesn't do private visitations anymore. And in fact, he hadn't welcomed anyone into his temple in 3 years, and he had agreed to see me.
Wow.
And
Wow. Wow.
so she said, if you get tired or if it gets too much, you all you have to do is stand up, and I will stand right up next to you, and I will walk out with you. And so I was like, you promise? And she goes, I promise. And everybody else had tested me with words. Read this person, read that person. How's their son doing? How's their daughter doing? How's this going? I mean, it was just regular readings. And he came and he sat down, and there was an interpreter, and he burst into blue. He didn't say a word. And I went, oh, you're a blue light being. But I said that out loud, and I said it telepathically, and he smiled because he didn't speak English. And I'm like, you're from the stars, you're a star being. And now it's all telepathic. And then next thing you know, we're telepathically just communicating like we are the best of friends. The interpreter says, kind of annoyingly, I'm going to put it in my own words. Look, lady, you don't know how important this man is, and you're just sitting there not saying anything. And are you going to ask him any questions? So he didn't say that, but it was kind of like that's what he was saying. And I said, oh, sorry, we don't need you. We're having a full on conversation. And he looked at me and he smiled again. He didn't speak English. And so he was showing me he is a star being. And then finally he said through the interpreter, please tell her she is a second-degree clairvoyant. So he tells me that. And he said, and then tell her she has more ability than 98% of all the Taoist masters in all of China. And he tells me that. And then the Taoist master said to him, so tell her, don't ever listen to another Taoist master again, only listen to herself.
Oh my gosh.
And tell her that all the information that she's getting is absolutely true, and keep following it.
That's phenomenal.
And then he
That's
said, can I take
phenomenal.
you to lunch? So it is true that it's just like that journey, right? The hero's journey where
Yeah.
you're going and you think you're being led by spirit, but then you start to doubt, and then you start to feel like a fool because you just had this woman who just paid for your trip and nothing's happening, and you've got all these people who are starting to travel like a caravan and nothing's coming through. You're going to go home disappointed, like all that stuff. And then right when you think
Mhm.
you cross the finish line.
Oh my gosh. It is. And it is, why is it? I think if I ask ourselves why couldn't they just guide you to that one perfect person at the beginning? And I think at the end of the day, my answer that I always for myself makes sense is that we're here for the journey, that yes, we're here to serve, but the journey is always for us first. So there was something for you in that journey of 30 days of,
Yeah.
having been tested and people being rude to you and then having the guy finally say, only listen to yourself. Like all those people that put you, it's the whole, like talk about, you said now you're way more confident.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was part of that process of learning to embrace, like, okay, I will listen
Yeah.
to my own guidance.
Yeah. And he checks on me once in a while.
That is so
He'll just kind of
amazing.
show up, and it's like, oh, okay, he's looking out after me. Just
That is so cool. That is so, so cool. Wow. So you think he is like an embodied star being?
He definitely is an embodied star being.
Yeah, that is so, so awesome.
And
So
he
awesome.
works at the high governmental level. So people who the high governmental level will
Yeah.
consult with him on decisions. I found this out later. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so, so cool. So, okay, so another place. So I just had to go into that story because I just think it's so awesome and exciting. And I think so relatable for everyone that at some piece of our own stories we can find in your story. And beautiful and so cool how it just showed up for you in such a cool way. The more you commit, the more you
Yeah.
commit, the more it shows up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go into you were just recently talking about frozen sound.
Mm.
And that certainly caught my attention. So I thought that was a really, really cool, cool conversation to explore. So specifically, what I heard you talking about is that that you heard or that you so anyways, I'll let you talk about it. Give us a little introduction to this concept that you're recently exploring about frozen sound. That there's frozen sound in architecture, in structures that can be very positive for the human body or for waking us up, but there can also be like negative, this very, very low frequency, which is what most people talk about, right?
Right. The infrasound.
Infrasound, that's what it is. Infrasound. So is this
Infrasound.
like a scientifically known thing,
Yes.
infrasound?
If anybody types it into the search engine, you will get a lot of information about infrasound. But um, I became, this is a whole other story. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try to. So what happened was, so over the last several years, so we had our three surges, and unfortunately, COVID was one of those
Yes.
results. And that's how I first saw COVID was just these blue lights like raining down. And I'm like, what is that? And then it was like 3 months later, COVID pandemic hit. And so I really did a deep dive on that one, but we were really getting activated. I know it's a virus, and I
Yes.
I haven't made all the connections, but there was something
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
that was activating us.
And I
But
should ask, by the way, what did you view as the moment of 2023? If you felt the third wave in 2023, did you feel it in the eclipses or what was it where did you feel it in 2023?
Well, in 2021, it came through the pyramid in Xi'an, China, and they said it
Okay.
would come through a pyramid in Xi'an, China. And how many of your listeners know that there's a pyramid in Xi'an, China?
Yeah.
So I
Very
did
cool.
not know that. And so I
Yeah.
came home and I did my research, and guess what? There's a
Mm,
pyramid. And
mm,
the pyramid is in alignment with Orion's belt. Okay.
mm.
And then they said in 2021, it would come through Teotihuacan in Mexico, outside Mexico City. It's also aligned with Orion's belt. I learned all this later on. And Yvonne and I literally had to go. They wanted us to go because the capstone was missing at the top of Teotihuacan. So they wanted us to go take a look and repair the capstone. I didn't even know what a capstone is. So this is what I'm saying, like these journeys are wild. And
Yeah.
then in 2023, they kept saying it's coming through the pyramids in America. And I'm like, Miss Know It All, I don't know if you know, but there aren't any pyramids in America. And so, so I kept saying that, and they were like, what has been hidden will be revealed. Truth is
Yeah.
going to be revealed. And then finally, it was like, oh, it's on Hopi land, and it's the three mesas aligned with Orion's belt again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they told me those used to be pyramids. They've been worn down through
I have heard
floods.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Super cool.
so,
And then the Hopi have their connection.
yes.
Yeah, which is yeah, their stuff is very star aligned as well, which
Yeah.
is super cool.
Yeah. So getting back to the sound frequencies. So I've been doing these talks, frequency forecasts. So they really started moving me towards pure frequency. And out of that is the quantum physics. And out of that, the light codes, when I saw it started showering down just before COVID hit, which it hit first in Washington State, by the way.
Right. Yep. Not far from where I live.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
That was the first case. And but I was like, what are those? And it's like, those are light codes. Okay, what are light codes? They're filled of high levels of knowledge and understanding and wisdom. And when the light codes come, they say they're like snowflakes that can melt on your skin, but they activate humanity's DNA. And not just some of you, it's everyone. They always tell me if you're standing out in the street and it rains, everybody's going to get wet. So all of humanity gets impacted by this. So all that, it's been an 8-year journey. And then this past year, they started talking about frequency as a sound. And of course, frequencies can have color and sound, but I hadn't really thought about it that way. And then it started coming through hieroglyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs. So they've kind of taught me in phases. It's not like you can be in kindergarten and you're handed a doctorate level textbook.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not how at least that's not how they work with me.
Right. Me too.
And so then it was sound, and then I was listening to a talk.
It needs to be power
Oh,
washed.
excuse us. You guys got it? Thank you so much. What needs to be power washed?
Well,
The pyramids need to be power washed.
And so I listened to a talk from William Henry. So William Henry is an art historian, and he looks at the symbology and he interprets it. And he's the co-producer of Ancient Aliens and all this stuff. So there was a word he said, and he said frozen sound. And I went, oh my God. So it was like Egypt and in the temples. And next thing you know, it was a similar kind of thing. This trip to Egypt dropped into our lap. And next thing you know, it's like that's where we were 2 weeks ago. Went to Egypt with William Henry.
Oh,
But their
fun.
stones in the temples are made of these different marbles and crystals. And just when you pass, so all the Egyptian culture is talking about everything's about frequency and sound, enlightenment, and awakening. So just by humans passing by the pillars activates this frozen sound
Yeah.
into like it waves through your body. So infrasound can be the highest of the high that the human ear can't hear, and it's the lowest of the low that the human ear can't hear. But there are countries now using it as warfare. So I will say that that they can use infrasound where all of a sudden you feel like you have a headache or your ears are ringing so loud, you get nauseated, things like that. So let's just put that aside. Lions have infrasound, elephants have infrasound. Sasquatch is especially known for projecting out this infrasound that can stun animals, making them easier to catch. And
Mhm.
or when hunters have been out hunting and all of a sudden they're like, I can't move.
Yes.
So we are being impacted. So as our consciousness is expanding, our DNA is getting activated, we're starting to not only hear more sound, we're able to tap into a greater level of frequency. Our spirit is able to view life from multiple levels of frequencies. So you're watching, the neighbor rake their yard, and you might look at it from one perspective, but what the Syrians are telling me is there are 12 perspectives to every event.
Mhm.
12.
Mhm.
And so sound's coming up a lot. And so a lot of times we don't feel good. It's like, well, I can't meditate today because I don't feel good. Well, you don't feel good because you need to meditate, because there's these frequencies coming into the earth. Okay, so I'm just going to say this because I wrote down, if I was going to say one, I asked him, if I'm going to say one thing, what do you want me to say?
Let us have it. We're ready.
So they said the cosmic galactic celestial light came in to soften Earth um, with higher frequencies through the pyramids, through laser, to soften Earth, to help so that humanity could digest. So think of it like a baby bird that, or a bird, mother bird chews the worm and then puts it in the baby's mouth. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like that, the blue beings of light saying the celestial light was coming in. And what they're saying now is as above, so below. So now the earth is starting, the light is really going into the earth, and it's a current of gentle kindness. So it's a frequency of gentle kindness. It's going down in the earth. It's coming up through nature. And they said, please let everyone know that nature interprets the galactic messages and whispers them to humanity.
Love that. Oh my gosh. That's so cool. I will tell you, I have been like in my garden all like in the evenings. I'll go out in the garden and work in my garden for like 3 hours in that time period, after dinner, before bed, because that's like it's finally cool enough. It's been so hot here lately.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling it. It is just it's lovely. It's an
Yeah.
absolute lovely thing to be outside right now. But that's gorgeous. Thank you so much for that. I'm so glad you shared that with us.
Yeah.
I
Well, and they said the gentleness, we can discount it because there's so much agitation going on that we
yeah.
think that we need to meet that with agitation. But actually, this gentle kindness is going to cut through and dissolve.
Everything. So it's so interesting that you should share that right now, because the conversations I'm having right now with the Mother of Creation are all about the message is all about gentleness. It is that basically that you're
Love
not
it.
here to persuade anybody. Nobody's can persuade anybody. It's about presence and the gentle presence, and that is what leads to the unfolding. So it's like it's softening and unfolding, and
Yeah.
that it is all about being the witness, about that gentle presence.
Yes.
And the more that we can just be ourselves, the more we are shining that light, the more we are helping bring that light to the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it does not mean being passive. And it
Yeah.
also
Agreed.
does not mean that you can't let someone have it with some boundaries,
Yeah.
and respect. It doesn't mean that that can't happen, but because it's the frequency, you can still do it with that frequency, that gentler frequency. It's like, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. This is not going to happen, and still hold that frequency. That's what we're learning. I
I
mean,
love that you bring that up, because I feel like the way that it works, I feel like that it only works like, and I think this is where we get led astray in spirit, is that we're taught to be gentle to the point of being passive, right? To letting ourselves be abused, or overgiving, abandoning ourselves, all of that. When in fact, we are meant to get to gentleness through uh becoming internally completely harmonized. Like once we are 100% good in our own skin, then the concept of boundaries doesn't make sense, because we are self-contained. We're
yeah,
no longer reaching into another place to get our self-validation, there's
yeah,
nothing we need from outside. We are resourced from the inside. And
yeah,
at that point, whatever anybody else is going on no longer affects us. And then
right.
we can come into that mix and we can be gentle, because we're not taking anything away or giving anything. It's literally we are completely self-encompassed. Does that make sense? And from
Oh
that
yeah,
state
no,
of mind,
it
then
makes a lot
gentleness
of
makes
sense,
sense.
and it's like when we think about, the teachings of benevolence, it's that uh, if you're a benevolent being, if you're a spiritual being, you're not going to eat meat, and you're going to do yoga every day. Like we've got these certain ideas about what spiritual means, and that's just not true. You're just being asked to be yourself,
Yes.
and you can be gentle. And I've been, spitting nails, pissed off, but what people feel is my compassion.
Yeah.
They feel my gentleness. So this is what we're talking about. I can still say, you don't get to do this. This is not okay.
Mhm.
But the frequency that is a part of my being can still be that frequency of kindness and compassion.
Yes. I think that part where we say this is not okay is the part where we honor ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's part of being in harmony with our own truth, is honoring, okay, this is the path that they're choosing. And that path may be one that is not in alignment with me, because I need to honor myself.
Yeah.
And so I won't allow that to happen in my space.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just beautiful. Okay. So now, Nancy, if you would please share how is it that you work with people in the world these days? On a human Nancy, how do you work with people in the world these days?
So I do teach, I have 3 1-year long programs. So I have the first one's foundational, and it's helping, I'm teaching people techniques to be able to work with their energy field, dismantle, old pain, get really grounded. And then we have a community, and so I do it a year because it's like a lifestyle. You're allowing your own soul, your own spirit to be in the front seat of the car. And it just doesn't happen in a weekend workshop where, you have to keep telling your mind, and and I teach it through experience. So I talk about intuitive meditation. The second level one is more intermediate, where people who may want to be a professional psychic healer. And then the third one is our advanced students. So I work with about 500 students a week. But yeah, when Spirit asked me to do a YouTube channel, I mean, I just need to have people come on and tell you how hysterical. I know you know what that's like, but my first YouTube video took me 65 takes. Thank goodness I wasn't doing it
shocking
live.
the amount of like technical stuff that's involved in I cannot tell you how many times. Yeah, like it's because there's so many different pieces, the
Yeah,
audio doesn't match the video. And it's yeah, it is like I
yeah,
can so relate to that.
yeah. And then the current 12-week going with my Egyptian trip and frozen sound, and we're working with frequencies. We have gong baths and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I do in 2 weeks, I'm doing the summer solstice. So I read a whole group of people as if they're one person. So it
Mm,
can feel like I'm privately reading you, but I'm tapped into the collective where
yeah.
we're all working off of. So that comes up in a couple of weeks, but it is, and then of course the blue light beings when they come through and they ask for something. But right now there's so many people working with star beings
It is amazing. It is amazing.
that the pressure's off of me.
Yeah, it's a nice, that's a nice thing. Well, I just want to share your website is intuitivemind.com. We do have a couple questions in the comments. You
.org.
definitely piqued some interest with the
So it
comment
is, I
about
just want to say it's .org,
Oh,
O-R-G.
.org. Oh, thank you so much for that. Sorry, Nancy. Intuitivemind.org. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Yeah.
And then I just have to, before we let you go, you did definitely pique some interest with the comment about the second wave being COVID. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of, we've had so much information and conversation about COVID. So, people are talking about that people thought that there was a lot of dark energy involved in this. She says, but maybe the blue lights were galactic response to aid to wake us all up. So do you have any final words on that topic? Just because it is a controversial topic. How do you usually
Yeah, it
address
is a
that?
controversial topic, and that's why I didn't talk about it. And
Fair, very fair. Do you have anything you
I'm
would
like,
like
is
to say in
consciousness
response to
ready
that
for
question?
this?
And
Yeah, is
if you choose to
consciousness ready
pass,
for
it's
this
okay.
conversation? And so all I know is it came through, there were just blue sparkles. It's just like if you were to take a tub of blue sparkly, sprinkles, that it just was coming down all over everything. And then suddenly this pandemic was activated.
Yeah.
So when I asked about with the star beings, what they said was that the blue light is activating the DNA and consciousness and expansion and preparing the human body to be able to take in higher levels of wisdom. And for
Mhm.
that to happen, they need to detox, and they need to detox quickly.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that they interjected a virus, and in fact, that's not what happened.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure if that was a result of a higher frequency or what. So
Right.
what I do is I invite everybody to value your opinion,
Yes.
value the guidance that you're getting. And guess what? I think we're all right at
Mhm.
some level.
Yeah.
I think that we all can be right because there's 12 sides to
Yes.
every perspective.
And there's also the fact that so one of the things that's true as a channel is that, and and this is why I think it's so interesting for people like you and I to have a conversation together, is that we are, as I always say, there's sort of like, you blindfold 7 people and have them touch an elephant and they're all going to describe
Yeah.
a different piece of the elephant.
Yeah.
And as a channel, I know I get a segment of
Yeah.
information and that's what I share. But there are other people who channel on very, very different things and they'll all come together in the end. They're all a
Yeah.
piece of the puzzle. But I
Yeah.
don't, I think they even say somewhere like you see in part, you whatever, like we don't see everything. We see pieces, and we see enough to do whatever it is, work to play our role, to play our part.
Yeah.
And so in
Yeah.
terms of getting that information, you say it as you saw it as blue light coming down. Like, okay, beyond that, I can say energies come in, and those energies can have positive and negative manifestations. How are they going to show up in the
Yeah.
world? And how
Yeah.
do people respond to those energies? So
Yeah.
I think I like your point of just saying that, be respectful of our own guidance, in the same way that you were guided by the Taoist master that you met, to respect your own guidance.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing, I read once that it was like, because the first blue light surge came through on November 19th, 2019, and November 19th, 2019. And when I read that, it was like the first virus was discovered in China on November 19th, 2019. And I'm like, what are the chances of that?
Yeah. Very, very cool.
So did
Very
that
cool.
virus get activated?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Who
Mhm.
knows?
Yeah.
But this is what's going to be happening. There's so much happening, and it's so fast, and
Yeah.
it's very active at the galactic level, and it's very active under the earth right now with galactic knowledge.
Love it. All right. Well, before we sign off, I want to. So many of you know we have our new group, which is called Soul Society, and those of you who have joined it, there is a 2-week trial period. If you haven't joined it, would like to come try it out, now is a great time to do it. We do weekly clearings in Soul Society, and then we also have our esteemed and wonderful Wisdom Soup speakers now come into Soul Society for an after party, and you are absolutely invited to come. So even if you're a member, come and join us there next. If you would like to try it out, we'd love to have you join us. Even if you just come for the 2-week free trial, we'd love to have you feel included. So please come join us. All right, so we'll see you there shortly. And Nancy, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. Thanks you so much, our fabulous Wisdom Soup community. I will see you guys next month, always the second Thursday. And yeah, looking forward to the next one. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.